Uh-oh. Let's see. Is it
Can you see me?
adding you? Yay!
Hi. Can you see me?
I see you. Can you see me?
Yes, absolutely.
It's so good to see you. Haven't seen you since Idlewild. How are you?
Yes, absolutely. It's an honor to see you and be on the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you coming on to talk. Can you hear me well? Because I have my headphones in. Can you hear
Absolutely.
me okay? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So pretty much, I really wanted to do this because this is the 3-year anniversary for me. Well, first, let me introduce myself. My name is Danielle Dunn. I am the author of the Ivy Locks book series. Ivy Locks is a project that was started by my best friend Ivy and I back in 2002. And it took
Mhm.
until 2016 to complete and produce this project. In the course of us coming up with this concept,
Yeah.
Ivy was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2004, and she passed away in 2005. So once she passed away, it kind of put me on a emotional, mental, spiritual, and definitely creatively at a standstill. And it wasn't until I really decided to deal with my grief that I was
Mhm.
able to put the project out. And I put the project out April 24th, 2016, on what would have been Ivy's 37th birthday. And it was really hard for me to share that with people because I didn't want to make people sad. But what I realized is that grief is such a connective experience because we all will deal with it.
Mhm.
Um, every one of us will deal with a loss. And in this particular case, we're talking tonight about the death and the loss of a loved one. Um,
Yes.
so I reached out because I wanted to be able to talk to someone who has experienced that, but also to encourage other people to see that there is life after grief and that
Mhm.
we can use our grief to propel us, into our purpose, into our
Uh,
creativity. So, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
yes. So my name is Deidre Dssense Smith. I'm a singer-songwriter, primarily MC nowadays. I don't have the pipes I used to have. But I'm also a workshop facilitator, creator of S.Y.M.M.Y.S, that's Speak Your Mind, Mind Your Speech. And it's a workshop geared toward community outreach, community building, and restorative justice, which uses the principles and elements of hip hop for
Oh,
tools of the community.
awesome.
And from that also stems the inclusion cipher or tick, which is one element of S.Y.M.M.Y.S that really emphasizes the importance of cipher,
Okay.
and not just in traditional sense in hip hop as far as writing and rhyming in a circle, but more so about enforcing the importance of one's presence within a community. Meaning, if I were to remove you from the cipher, your energy, it would not be the same. If I were to remove you
Mm,
from this community, it wouldn't be the same. So
mm,
that kind of touches on loss in presence as well. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell as far as what I do. And I'm just really big on community and really big on art. And I recently lost my mother last year, last
mm.
January, and
Okay.
buried her a day before my birthday in
Mm,
February. So yeah,
mm.
so I know all too well about grief.
So, because I had some things that I had asked you beforehand, um,
Yes.
and I remember you saying that the death was sudden, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
dealing with a sudden death, for me, I watched it. It was over a year's time, and so it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a peak of wellness and then a decline. But within that
Mm-hmm.
year, kind of knowing that it could go either way, but being
Mm-hmm.
hopeful that there was that she would recover. So, can you talk about how did that feel initially? How did you initially respond to the death of your mother, and
Mm-hmm.
how did it um, affect your work?
Mm. Well, yes, the death of my mom came suddenly. She had fallen ill numerous times prior to her death, and we come from strong stock, and so she had suffered a heart attack, a couple of them actually, a stroke, an aneurysm that was caught just in time, bleeding on the
Mm,
brain, all these things, and it just when this happened, I remember getting a call and feeling like I couldn't sleep the night before. I couldn't sleep the night before, and I'm very sensitive. And I knew with this anxiety, something was on the horizon. I didn't know exactly what it was. But when I got in the call, I kind of knew when they said,
mm-hmm,
Mom, and before the sentence can be completed, you just know. I said, oh, this is what it is.
mm,
So I threw on my clothes and I got to the hospital and heard what had happened. And she had respiratory issues earlier that morning that came on suddenly and had passed out from that and was in a coma.
okay,
And it I think for me, as sudden as it was, I was still prepared, oddly enough.
okay,
And I would like to say that it was the preparedness was attributed to having seen her ill numerous times prior.
okay.
But no, I just think if you are spiritual, if you do subscribe to spirituality in any way, I just think it was the preparedness that Yahuwah had prepared me for and conditioned me, for by seeing her ill so many times that when this day of death was approaching, I wasn't easily shaken.
Mm,
And so I just think I think the grief didn't settle in until weeks, if not months later. And I
okay, what
kind
do
of
you
have a
mean?
delayed response.
Okay, that's what I was going. I was just. But
I
go
kind of
ahead. Go
have a
ahead.
delayed, yeah, I kind of have a delayed response to traumatic events. I think it's because I'm so ready to be strong, ready to do
Mm,
what needs to be done as far as the business aspect of death, because it is very a big business in that
mm-hmm.
handling affairs of not only yourself but the loved one that you've lost,
Yes.
making sure the family's in order, all these things that you are preoccupied with, that you don't have the time to really deal with the grief of the actual loss
Mm-hmm.
of your loved one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so once everything gets calm and once you have a moment to be alone with yourself and your thoughts, that's when it hit me.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it hit me. And it hit me in such a way that um, I stayed in bed for a few days. I remember snacking on gummy candies. That was like my food of choice. I remember my diet changing drastically.
Okay.
Not that I don't like the sweet things, anyway, but I remember not taking the best care of myself.
Yeah.
And also, I remember plunging into my work and not my 9 to 5 work, but more so my creative work. I remember different poems that had come to me. And although I'm an MC, I hadn't written spoken word pieces in quite some time.
Okay.
But I've written these pieces that I still don't recite. They were so intimate and so much deeper than I had gone before, right? And
The poetry became a refuge.
mm-hmm, it had
Okay.
always been, but for some odd reason, and having dealt with death with close friends from being a young girl and losing
Mm,
friends from the street life, from whatever, from illness, death I knew was inevitable.
mm,
But this
mm-hmm.
death was just, it's your mother. And I remember diving into those parts of myself that reminded me most of her.
Mm,
That's what made it deeper.
mm.
Because
So what is
as
that?
I stated
What
in,
did
in
that look
your,
like?
yeah, so I remember one of your Q&A questions was, how did it change your work ethic or your work style? And like I was telling you on the phone earlier last week, my voice became heavier on tracks. Whereas I would record, and my speaking voice is naturally deeper than my performance voice a lot of times. And it was very soft, very melodic, didn't have a lot of force to it. It had some power, its own power. But I remember hearing one of my newer recordings for the first time after the death of my mother, and I sounded more like her. It was the deep, sultry voice that she has, you know. I always wanted that, you know, but it never translated well on my recordings. It was always this kind of mousy sound, this young, still a young sound. And I'm 36, and I had kept that kind of soft, mousy sound for quite some time. But just within a year's time, my voice is husky. It's more aggressive even. It's like that pain and everything that I felt I lost in her, missing hearing her voice on the phone, or missing her tone, the way she would sing. My voice naturally became that. And as I wake up every day, I hear the tonation in my voice, and I'm thinking, wow, it's getting deeper, it's getting richer. I'm slowing down my speech. I would speak a little faster. My cadence will be rapid fire. Now my delivery and my writings even are more conversational. It's less about the pizzazz of, you know, wordplay and dazzling an audience with different rhyme patterns and trying to intrigue them that way. Now it's more so, this is what's on my heart. This is what I'm trying to convey. Hopefully it resonates. If not, this is for me.
Yes.
And with that truth and that honesty, I can hear her voice in me. So, yeah.
That's interesting, because I know for me, I had the opposite. I could not get past finishing up the book because I kept trying to speak for her. I kept trying to say, well, what would she have wanted us to write? And what would she have, what would she have thought? What would Ivy have? And I had to begin to speak for myself, because I said, I can't speak for her. And I think that for me, that was like a creative roadblock, and why it took so long, because I was trying to speak for her, speak for us. But I realized I had to speak for myself, but make sure instead that the work honored her and honor the relationship, as opposed to trying to sound like, what would she have, you know, what would she have put here, and what would she have wanted this character to say, and how would she have wanted, because it initially was our project. So that's interesting that with you were able to, you found your voice almost as a part of your mom in her transition, you know, and how the energy, and that's just, oh wow, like that's really powerful, you know, that you said your voice became deeper and kind of sounded like your mother. And it's just that difference in terms of our creative process and what became of our work after the loss of, you know, our loved one. So when people talk about like different stages of grief, do you think that you have experienced all the stages when people talk about like anger, coming to terms with, like let me pull it up, the 5 stages. And this is what people say are the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Have
Yes.
you experienced all 5, or are you still, have you accepted? Are you angry? Did you experience denial? Do you think you've experienced those things?
Yeah, the denial, no.
Okay.
Death was
Okay.
always an absolute for me. And I think in my 30s, knowing that death had its, you know, it's inevitable, but also learning in my 30s that energy is mutable. And with my belief and knowing where she is and knowing what I wanted for her, we had somewhat of a strained relationship prior to her death. I don't have the denial or the anger. I have some regrets. I feel like a lot of time was wasted on things that it should not have been wasted on.
Yeah.
But there was never a denial. There was never this can't be happening. This would have eventually happened. This is, you've seen this happen before. This is, you've gotten over this before. But it was also a realization of this will be heavier, the heaviest death I had ever experienced. Because so many factors came into play. There was the knowing that whatever could be mended would not be mended in the natural. And a lot of that reconciliation isn't even, I don't think it's a two-party situation. It has to do with a lot of myself. So I deal with that accordingly, but it doesn't negate the fact that I still have these deep resentments, and not so much toward her. I think initially with the initial grief, I had some mild resentments toward her, just the time wasted. But a lot of the accountability that I've taken on has helped ease some of that guilt of time wasted for myself, and the understanding that I have spiritually of what death symbolizes and what it doesn't symbolize. I think most importantly,
so what
has
is
got me
that?
through it.
So what is that?
What it does symbolize is transition. Transition doesn't mean stop. Transition itself is keep going.
Yes.
Now, what you keep going off into, that's another thing. We all argue about what that is. But we all say transitioned. We all say that. We all use the term transition. So for that to be a universal knowledge, well, then you have to ask yourself, is it really death?
Right.
Because it would be a stop. You wouldn't say transition. Transition is evolution. It's forward motion or upward motion, but it's motion nonetheless.
Yes.
So when you say when you say that thing, when you use different terminologies and you actually sit with those words that you're using, where you have to ask yourself, why am I using these words? And why am I so comfortable using these words? And if you find comfort in the way that you define this moment, well, then you can find comfort in knowing that the energy hasn't stopped. The existence hasn't stopped.
Yes.
It's out of our realm in the way that we're familiar with it. But praise God for that even.
Yes.
Because for a very long time, my mom wasn't at her best. She wasn't at her optimum level of health or happiness, I don't believe. So when you put your selfish desires to the side and all the things you wish were mended and all the moments you wish you could recapture or redo, and you let go and realize it ain't about you. I said to myself, when we're around those hospital beds or those death beds, and we call in everybody that we know to call, and we give the best prayer of our lives, right? The strongest, most earnest prayers we ever prayed in our lives, right?
Yes.
Why don't we ever consider what their prayers are when they laying there, listening to us? What if we're praying what if we're on contrary of what they're asking for? See, it ain't about us.
Yes.
And as soon as we realize that, it makes it a little easier. It don't take the sting away.
Yeah.
But it makes it a little easier.
That's, that is where I got stuck in my grief, because I was praying, fasting, begging. And if she said that she wanted to be healed and she wanted peace, and if it meant having to transition, then she was good, right?
Yes.
But I wasn't, because that's not what I prayed for. And I think that's, you know what I mean? It's like, no. I wanted her to be good here. And I wanted her to be at peace here. And it's like, and I think that's a big part of where we get caught up, and where sometimes that grief can be so overwhelming. Because for me, because I didn't get what I wanted.
Mm.
I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted my friend. I wanted her to be well. But is she not well?
That's right.
Is she not well?
That's right.
So that took time and maturation for me. I had not experienced much death
Mm.
before this happened. I could count on my, probably have fingers left, how many funerals I had been to. So it was, death was, this was one of the closest deaths that I had ever experienced. But when you said that, like when they're laying there and we're huddled around and we got everybody over and we're, oh, you know, and I'm doing this and that because it's what we want.
Yes.
And what does that? Well, we want them to be well. We want them to be okay. But just because it doesn't look like what we wanted it to look like doesn't mean that it isn't so.
That's right.
And when you talked
Absolutely.
about having the transition, that's really who that really that hit me hard when you said that.
Mm.
You know, because I feel like my relationship with Ivy has transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still there. It's still
Mm-hmm.
relational, you know, but just in a different form. And when I stop focusing on, I think we get caught up in our grief, focusing on what we think should have been and
Mm.
casting out thoughts into the future that this person should have seen this and this person was supposed to be here for this
Yeah.
and we were supposed to do that. And then that gets you stuck, you know, instead of thinking about how this relationship, there's still a relationship, but it's just transition and it's in a
Yeah.
different form now.
Mm-hmm.
So with transition, you talked about how your art has transitioned. So if
Yes.
you could give someone who has a business inside of them, has a project inside of them that they have put on hold because they haven't been able to heal and they haven't been able to deal with the grief that they're feeling, what would
Mm.
you what advice could you give them or what tip could you give them to be able to still find that spark of passion and creativity inside of them in the
Mm-hmm.
midst of their grief?
Mm-hmm. I would tell them, don't wait for the big spark. If they
Mm-hmm.
just have a day when they're able to get out of bed and make a mental note, if not an actual note, do that. And then the next day, if you can get out of bed and you can inscribe it, I don't care if it's on a napkin, do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you can just write one word, do that. If you can write two, do that. If you can write a full sentence, then the paragraph, do that. But
Mm-hmm.
don't force yourself into the big spark.
Mm-hmm.
Fan the ambers. Just, don't
Mm-hmm.
force the big light. Don't force the big aha moment. Go through the
Mm-hmm.
process. Sit with yourself. And it's funny because I thought about you. I've been wanting to do a children's book for a while, and it came to me and I wrote it in 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours. And just finished the illustration today. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been wanting to do that for years. And for you to reach out to me, it's all in divine order. But it took the desire. The desire was there for years.
Mm-hmm.
But it came after my mom's death. And I wanted it to be a very happy, happy book. But the character began to talk about her grief about the loss of her mom. It began to
Ah,
transform into that.
yes.
Do you hear
Mm-hmm.
me?
Yes.
And now here you are. I remember you with the Ivy. Like the first time I'd heard of your work, I want to say I was at a natural hair conference, and there was talk about it. You understand? And for us to be at Idlewild, these things had been in my heart and they had been on me to do. And I'm in the process of recording an album, but that was halted quickly.
Mm-hmm.
As quick as it was halted, the whole story for this character flooded out of me in 2 hours. Do you understand? So I would advise anybody to hold on to that desire for one. And
Mm-hmm.
then daily, just do what you can do. Don't let anybody force you into this busyness.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be still, if you want to cry, cry.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to sleep all day and eat Cheetos, do it. And in those moments when you can get up and you do have the desire to do what you want to do or you're called to do, do it. And then when you're called to rest and collapse, collapse. Don't stay there too long. but do it. The body knows what it needs. The mind knows what it needs. And don't allow get sound counsel around you too. And don't get anybody that's going to busy you because they're too uncomfortable in your grief and they don't know how to handle you. So they want to busy you because they can't counsel you. Get them out the way. Be in your solitude, be in your silence. That's peace. It's peace in that. It's not loneliness. It's peace in that.
Yes.
But you got to know how to recognize it. So, get quiet and hold on to those desires, and whatever you need to do, do it. Do it. Think about your ideas. Think about your desires while you're doing the laundry. If you muster up enough strength to cook dinner that night, think about it while you're cooking dinner. Think about it while you collapse. Think about it while you cry. Think about it. Think about it. Focus on that desire that you have and be steadfast, because I'll tell you something about grief. It makes you multifaceted. It makes you multifaceted. And I think it's because we're searching for comfort, and we're searching for something to fill the void that we have with this loss. And if you're not careful, you fill it with the wrong things. But 9 times out of 10, I found that people kind of go the healthier route. They fill it with, after they, after they get over their slump and slouching and eating the Cheetos, they tend to go for healthier meals. They tend to have healthier thoughts. They tend to recite healthier affirmations to themselves. They tend to get rid of bad company. It's something about it. So that's what I mean. It ain't about you. It's like that death, it brings about the death of so many other things that should have died a long time ago.
Yes.
It does. Ain't that crazy?
Yep. It is. That's
and
true.
Then you find life and all of that. Yeah, so
yes.
I advise everybody to please do what your body and your mind tells you to do. If it tells you to cry, please do it. If it tells you to go hug somebody, please do it. If it tells you to be of servitude to somebody, go out there and do that. Then come on back home. If it tells you to rest, please do that. And don't let anybody else deter you from what your heart desires in your grief. If your heart desires that 9-hour nap, take it.
Yes.
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 Because you come out on the other side all right. You really do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just I see and know people who get stuck. Yeah. And I've been there, I've been there. And for me, the grief was so suffocating. It was so suffocating. And it wasn't until one of my friends from high school, she was doing a one-woman play in Atlanta. She lived in Atlanta. I used to live in Atlanta. So I'm like, girl, what you doing? Like what? So I go down there to see it. This was in October of 2015. I go down there to see it. And I'm watching her tell her truth, tell her story, and just that freedom that came with it. Yes. I watched her. It was almost like shackles just fell off of her. And this is a woman that I had known since we were 16 years old. But yet I was learning things that I had no clue of. Yeah. And I said, I want that. I want that. I want this cloak of sadness off of me. Yeah. So I got to tell it. And I committed myself, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to honor her in this. I'm going to do something that I've always wanted to do, because it's possible to be free. She showed me the possibility of emotional and spiritual freedom and healing, because it took her years to get healed and be able to talk about what she had experienced. And that's when, for me, I was able to do it. And so I just appreciate you, the loss of a parent, of a mother is that's a lot, that can take us out. And I just love how you've used that to find this your voice, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and to also help other people to heal. You know, even the work that you do when you were talking about the cipher, you
Yes.
know, I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I just appreciate you so much for taking time out because I just wanted other people to be able to, if they felt like they were stuck, to kind of hear from somebody else, you know, get some
Mm-hmm.
different perspective, get validated,
Yes.
you know, because sometimes, like you said, people who try to busy you
Yes.
and make you feel like, oh, no, 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 don't talk about that. Like, don't deal with that. So,
Yes.
you know, and to let them know that it is a process and to hold on to that desire. So I just think that everything that you said, I mean, I'm looking at the comments. I meant to read them while we were talking. Yeah. Uh, let me see. Oh, somebody said, I love the way that you are breaking it down. This is powerful. Uh, mm. Something that I'm seeing is even the fact that you women are speaking on this gets me. I never had a close loss as an adult. I am praying this helps me in the wake of it ever happening. Somebody else said it's nothing like losing your mom. Mine was ill before she passed. My greatest comfort is knowing my loved one has transitioned and not ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Healing takes time.
And that's
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But I'm coming out. Praise God.
Yes.
Awesome.
Praise
Oh,
Yahuwah.
so what are you, do you have any projects coming up that we can support or find
Yes.
out about? You were talking about your children's book, and I mean, the topic,
Yes.
because how many children deal with the loss of a
Yes.
parent? Her son,
Yes.
my nephew,
Yes.
he is 16 now and feeling it. He was 3, and he's
Mm-hmm.
16, and it is, you're I'm seeing it, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
the book is needed, so you better
Yeah.
do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great. It's little Dee Dee show and tell,
Mm,
and I talk about my love of animals and nature and quiet time that really got me through this. I've always been a girl that loves agriculture and animals and things of that nature and music. And so yeah, she just this little girl that's just going on this journey with the loss of her mother and talking about how her closest friends are her pets that really get her through. Because I also believe this too, and when I speak about servitude during grief, find you somebody or something to take care of, something that depends on you every day. That also keeps you from taking that 9 hour nap to an 18 hour nap. you know, do that. So
mm-hmm.
that's they've helped me, and I little Dee Dee is course of course me in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
then also I have the new project. It isn't titled yet, but I'm
Okay.
telling you one thing: this project and these songs and I'm rhyming with such fervor. Like I say, a lot. I'm known for a lot of lyricism, and I like that because I love lyricism. But this time around, as I stated before, it's very conversational. I think it'll be far more relatable than a lot of other projects because it's very conversational, and I think there's a lot more relatability
Mm-hmm.
and more like the conversational type of flow, and it has a longer shelf life too when you approach songs that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that, and when it's you can check on my Detroit everything the song itself out on Spotify, iTunes, all those on everything, and then the whole project will be out later, and then you can catch some of my stuff just floating around YouTube, Bandcamp. Just type in Deidre Dssense Smith or D.S.SENSE, and if you see that big goofy grin, that's me. Click on it.
You have the best smile ever. You have the best smile ever.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, um, I want to leave it with, do you mind if we say her name?
No, I don't. Mary.
Mary.
Yes.
Mary. Hmm. Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for
Hey,
having me. This is good.
somebody's
This
gonna
is
get some
great.
healing tonight. Somebody
I'm
got some
telling you.
healing tonight.
I'm telling you.
All right,
I'm
then.
telling you.
All right, then. You
You
have a good night. And
absolutely. You
thank you
have an awesome
again.
night.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Don't be a stranger.
Okay.
Yes. Have a great
All
night.
right. All right, you too. Bye bye.